today it's finally time to finish the Cavour Desk. From massive slabs of oak to angles sharp enough to drive me insane. Legs, drawers, hours of sanding. Every piece has led to this moment. But not everything went as planned. Something about this desk isn't right. And today, you'll see why. But first, there were still details to finish. The rhythm of a build often begins quietly, with the weight of a tool in your hand. Moments like this aren't about speed. They're about slowing down, preparing for what comes next. Every project has these pauses, small rituals that guide the work forward. And with the tools ready, it was time to give the desk its foundation. The legs shaped and brought to life. Some parts of the build aren't about drama, they're about patience. The legs had already tested me with their impossible angles. Now, it was time to calm them down. Edges softened, corners rounded, the sharpness slowly fading away. The router doesn't just shape the wood, it changes how it feels in your hands. The corners lose their bite, the lines begin to flow. Then comes the sanding, long, steady, and repetitive. Not glamorous and not quick, but it's the work that gives the surface its soul. Grain after grain, the oak starts to shine back at you. This is quiet work, the kind of work no one notices unless it's missing. It's here, in these slow minutes, that rough lumber becomes something alive. Okay, so for the finish, I'm gonna apply the normal hardwood oil that I apply. I really like this, even though I love Rubio Monocoat. It's a little bit expensive here, and it's not that it's a big deal, but I also can't get it in more than 300 grams quantities, and it's really hard to get. So I found this, which gives almost the same color. It requires 2 coats and it doesn't have a hardener. The rest is almost exactly like Rubio Monocoat. The finish isn't that fine as it is with Rubio, but this is good as well. It's also rated for exterior furniture, so this can stay in the rain. It should protect the wood very well, so we shouldn't have issues with it. Raw oak feels pale, quiet, almost unfinished in spirit. The moment oil touches it, everything changes. It doesn't just sit on the surface, it seeps deep into the wood, waking it up from within. The grain darkens, patterns sharpen, shadows stretch across the surface. Every pass of the cloth pulls out more depth, more richness. The pale turns golden, the golden turns dark, and the wood finds its voice. This is the moment builders wait for, the payoff after weeks of sanding and shaping. Edges glow, surfaces shimmer, colors leap into view. The desk shifts here. No longer parts and pieces, but a single whole. It doesn't just look finished, it feels alive. For the first time, I could see the desk as it was meant to be. And with the surface alive, the work could move forward, towards its final character. Without the drawers, a desk is like a book without pages. The form is there, but not the story. The slides are never glamorous, but without them nothing works. Every screw has to be exact, a millimeter off and the whole drawer sticks. Piece by piece, the cabinet began to find its rhythm. Drawers sliding smooth, balanced and square. The kind of detail you only notice when it goes wrong. And then came the faces. The part everyone sees and the part that gives the desk its expression. Each one lined up carefully, with the gaps even and the edges clean. It's delicate work, more about touch than measurement. A fraction off and your eye catches it instantly. But when everything is aligned, it felt effortless, almost invisible. The bare cabinet was gone. In its place stood something whole, something real. The drawers were in, the faces aligned, but something still felt unfinished. The cabinets stood solid and square, but the sides, they were flat, blank and quiet. It was like the form was there, but it had no voice. So I cut thin oak strips, accents to run in steady lines along the sides. Each strip was pressed against its mark and pulled tight from the inside. The screws hidden, so the fronts stayed clean. From the outside, nothing interrupted the surface, only the lines of oak running quietly along the sides. Simple work, but enough to change how the cabinets carried themselves. Bit by bit, the blank sides began to change. Where there had been emptiness, there was now depth. Where there had been flatness, there was movement. From the front, the accents nearly disappear. But from an angle, you see them catch the light and the cabinets feel different. No longer plain boxes, but part of the design. So, I'm gonna use these between each and every drawer of the cabinet. The only way I think it's easy and without a hassle is to do it with pocket holes. So I'll do some pocket holes here with this and we're gonna put them up. On the surface, this looked like simple work. Line up the divider, hold it steady and sink in the screws. But those pieces decide everything. How smooth the drawers run, how square the cabinets feel. Even a few millimeters off and the drawers will rub, stick or grind to a halt. One by one, I close the space into smaller lanes. Each drawer given its path to follow. At first glance, the cabinet looked complete now. Strong, square, divided and ready. Those same dividers that promised order would later reveal the desk's biggest flaw. For now though, they were locked in, another step closer to calling the desk finished. But not everything could be solved in the shop. For the final pieces, I had to step away. It's finally time to go get the metal work for these parts. Yeah, just so you guys know, I'm not gonna film in the places I'm gonna go into, because I'm not the kind of person that likes to shove a camera in somebody's face. So that's why I usually film almost exclusively in my shop, and I don't film where I go. But I want to create a story here, so I'm gonna try to at least film after I get the items, so you guys can feel the excitement. Yes! Haha! I've been waiting 3 weeks for these. Well, 4. These are the spacers. This is the big spacer, and 4 of these, which are gonna be the holders for the glass. This is the spacers for the 2 feet, and these are the spacers. These 2 are the spacers between the legs and the cabinet. Yes! Let's go get the glass. As you guys can see, I got it. Let me just show you in the back. So the big glass is here, the small glass is in the cabin. Ignore the mess here. We've got it! Yeah!
The glass was finally home, safe and waiting for its turn. But before the metalwork could go in, there was still one last piece of oak to set in place. The big cabinet was still open at the back. From the front, it looked complete, but step around and it was hollow. I routed a groove along the rear edges, a hidden track for the oak panel I had built earlier in part 2. The cut was slow and steady, the router biting deeper with every pass until the slot ran the full length of the cabinet. The panel itself was simple, just a sheet of oak, but once it slid into its groove, the cabinet changed. The hollow frame closed. The box gained weight, a sense of enclosure. It was like walls settling around the room. I glued the edges, pressed it home, and the surface locked in with a quiet finality. Inside, the grain ran vertical, framing the wood drawers and pulling the eye upward. From a distance, you might not notice the difference, but without it, the cabinet would always feel incomplete. With the back panel fixed, the oak was finally finished. From here on, the desk would be built on glass and steel. The first piece of steel was a curve, a line that seemed simple, but carried the power to change the desk completely. It wasn't just a support for a drawer, it was the piece that would make the cabinet float, lifting its weight as if by illusion. Set against the oak, the curve softened the weight of the design. It broke the straight lines, drawing the eye along a gentle arc instead of a hard edge. There's something about the curve. It makes a design feel alive, as if it can move, as if it can breathe. The steel itself was heavy, unyielding, unwilling to shape without effort. But once in place, the curve no longer felt like metal. It became a gesture, a line drawn through the design. It wasn't loud. It didn't ask to be seen. It simply changed the balance of everything around it. Straight lines hold things still. A curve invites motion. And with this one piece of steel, the desk shifted from rigid to graceful. One bar, one arc, and the whole project began to carry itself differently. The next piece of steel is almost too small to notice. A short tube, no longer than my hand, but it carried more weight than its size would ever suggest. Its only task was to sit between the legs, pressed quietly in the shadows, holding their distance steady so they would never drift apart. Without it, the stance of the desk would change with every push and pull. A little wider here, a little closer there. Small shifts that over time would make the whole piece feel uncertain. With it, the legs locked into position, as if the desk had finally decided how it wanted to stand. There was no beauty in the piece itself, no flourish or curve to draw the eye. But beauty doesn't always come with what you see. Sometimes it comes from the quiet assurance that nothing will move when it shouldn't. Once fixed in place, the little spacer vanished almost completely, hidden between the legs, leaving behind only its effect: stability, balance, and silence. It was the kind of detail that could never claim attention, but without it, everything else would have been less certain and less grounded. And so, with one small bar of steel, the frame found its stance, quiet but unshifting, steady enough to hold what was coming next. The leg supports, smaller still than the divider, almost invisible once in place, yet carrying a quiet responsibility that nothing else could take on. They pressed against the legs like braces, holding them firm, making sure the desk would never sway when weight shifted across its surface. Individually, they were nothing more than short bars of steel, plain and unremarkable, the kind of pieces you could overlook in a pile of scrap. But once fixed to the frame, they became the difference between movement and stillness, between a desk that wobbles and one that feels carved into the ground. They didn't change the look of the desk, not in any way most people would ever see, but they changed its presence, the way it stood, the way it carried weight, the way it resisted every push. When they were in, the rest no longer felt like separate parts resting on the floor. They became one stance, one posture, as if the desk had planted itself in the ground and decided it wasn't going to move. Small pieces, yes, but strength often hides in places you never think to look. With the frame complete, it was time to prepare for the glass. Small holders, polished and bright, each one a tiny point of contact between steel, oak and light. They weren't meant to vanish, they were meant to be seen, like little gems glinting beneath the surface. Through the glass, each bracket would show itself, not loud, not dominant, but quiet detail that spoke of care. The last cuts were made in oak, carving notches into the legs so the final drawer could find its place. On one side, it would rest against the wood itself, grounded and certain. On the other, it would meet the curve of steel, balanced and light. The joint was simple in appearance, but it carried the essence of the design. Wood and metal meeting in a single line, each one completing what the other could not. The oak notch held the drawer steady, the curve of steel lifted it forward, and together they shaped the rhythm of the desk. When the drawer finally came home, the frame felt whole at last. Not an empty structure waiting to be filled, but a desk with every part resting in its place. The weight of oak, the strength of steel, the clarity of glass. All of it now tied together by the smallest of motions. With the drawer fitted, the build was complete in form, and the desk could finally be seen for what it was. From every angle, it looked finished, as if nothing more could be asked of it. But furniture is not judged only by what you see, it's judged by how it works and how it feels in use. And here, hidden behind the surfaces, was a flaw I could not ignore. The thin bottoms of the drawers had begun to sag, and as they bent, the edges rubbed hard against the dividers. The doors should have glided, instead they fought, reminding me that beauty and function must walk together, or the piece is never truly finished. I could have hidden it, shown only the polished lines, but honesty demands more. This desk is not ready to leave the shop. There will be another chapter, a chance to rebuild what failed, to set right what bent, and finally let this design stand without compromise. When that day comes, I'll share the full story, what it cost, what it sold for, and what it means to carry weeks of work from idea to completion. For now, it rests here, complete in appearance, but still waiting to become what it was meant to be. If you haven't seen how this desk came to life, parts 1 and 2 tell the story of the oak, the shaping, and the first struggles that brought us here. If you want to see the next chapter when it comes, subscribe and join me for the journey.